Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Inspire View series. My name is Cherrise Boucher, and I'm a transformational life mentor. And I just want to tell you a little bit about this series before we jump into this next interview. I felt really inspired to put it together because I feel it's so important for every single person to incorporate something that they're passionate about into their lives. So I've connected with all these amazing women, so far just women anyway, and they share some tips and tricks and things that they've done, things that they've maybe overcome to incorporate what they're passionate about into their lives, and they share how that has personally affected them. So I'm going to introduce you today to a really cool person that I've met recently, and we end up having in common that we're both from Maine, so small world. She loves to create pictures with words, paint on a canvas of soil, and cook food that tastes good and looks beautiful. She's nourished by the ocean, northern climes, long walks in the woods, winters by the wood stove, and helping things grow, both people and plants. She has also spent nearly a decade of seasons on small, sustainable farms, apprenticed with multiple herbalists, and taught everywhere, from the decks of a schooner to a sugar shack under a full moon. She is always open to explore new places, whether it's down the street or across the sea. She is the founder of North Star Nomad, is passionate about creating sensory experiences that reconnect people with their bodies and the world around them while bringing more joy, grounding, and wonder into their lives. She offers coaching and mentoring opportunities for growth that are supported by the plants, the seasons, and the places one longs to wander. I am honored and excited to introduce you to, like I said, a fellow native Mainer who now lives in Scotland, and her name is Heather Borkowski. Hi, Heather.
Hello. So exciting to be here.
That is super exciting. The connections we make from around the world. It's very cool.
Super
and
cool.
then we find that we're even more connected in ways we didn't even know. So, so Heather has actually, from a conversation we had previously, told me a little bit about her background, and I hope she shares some of that today too, because she's was born with nature around her and her hands in the soil, I think, from what it sounds like, and she's never really veered off of that. So it seems like her passion was born into her from the beginning, and she kind of stuck with it, even though it came in different forms.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, definitely.
How did your background as a farmer and educator influence the way you now work with coaching?
Yeah, so I kind of, like you were saying, I grew up kind of in the garden and farming and around nature. And then after university, kind of went back to that. And so worked for a number of years as a farmer and apprentice, and managed different little farms all over the country. And then also did a lot of teaching. And so as I did that, it was really exciting to kind of watch people as they worked in the garden, and, you know, just through the simple act of kind of planting seeds and harvesting vegetables, just how much growth there was happening there. And so that connection to nature and that connection to the seasons, both seeing other people have that connection to the seasons, and for me personally, just really living with that really deep connection to the seasons, and how each season kind of both has food that like is really kind of both, you know, appropriate and resonating with it, and then also it has like kind of a mood that resonates with it. Like spring is kind of that season of emergence and growth, and like kind of opening up and new beginnings and everything. And whereas winter is much more that season of stillness and quiet and kind of internal work. And so as a farmer, you know, when you're working with the seasons so intricately, I found that work really influenced who I was and how I was living. And so I bring that to my coaching now, because our bodies really resonate with cycles. And even though like a lot of the, you know, kind of work that a lot of people do now, the schedules aren't as obviously cyclical, or cycle based, they don't take to account the kind of energy of the seasons quite so much. Our bodies are still going through that. And so kind of working with people like around what's going on outside in the seasons and what's showing up in their bodies. And one of the trainings I did with kind of my herbal work is that I got introduced to the 5-element Chinese theory. And so that works with the seasons as well in a little different way, looking at each season as having an element. And so like spring is the element of wood, and that there are different colors associated with each season. Like green is the color of spring. And so you can use that color and the foods that are associated with it, like nettles or kind of your spring greens, like all your new foods that are kind of just showing up when you're really excited after having, not too much tea that's fresh and vibrant in the winter. You're getting to spring and you're like, oh, there's like all these great greens that you can eat, whether they're wild greens, which being in Scotland now is really brilliant because there's lots of wild greens growing around, or whether they're greens that you're getting at your farmer's market or in your shop. And so bringing people back into that connection with seasons and rhythms and cycles, I feel like is really important in what I do. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds, I hadn't really thought, because like you said, we're so out of that realm of following cycles anymore. We're just shoved into jobs and we just plug along and do things, and it doesn't really change for most of us, unless you're in like Southern Maine working in the hospitality industry or restaurants, right? Then it's totally by cycle because everything shuts down.
Yeah, and like when I was farming, my like workload kind of followed the seasons, because like in spring you're kind of just gearing up and getting really ready, and then summer's when everything's kind of exploding, and then fall's when you're harvesting and kind of putting things by for the winter, and then winter's that kind of time of like you're doing some planning, but it's much more a time of stillness, and you're getting that kind of quiet time if you choose to kind of prepare for the next coming of that cycle. So yeah, it's really great.
Yeah, it must be I don't know if you ever have, I'm sure you have, like worked with people who are kind of new to growing things. And we've been here, my boyfriend is really excited about growing whatever seeds and pits we have. So because I started out, I grew an avocado. So it's probably about 6 feet tall now out on my back patio. So now we've got, I think, 2 or 3 other avocados growing in pots, and like 4 more that were just starting to root. We're going to be like guacamole central over here at some point.
Yeah, I have to say I have an avocado plant that's living at my parents' house in Maine now because I left it behind.
Yeah. Gosh, I love avocados. So that's a patient thing to do, because that can take months for them to even sprout a root. So as soon as you're like ready to give up on the thing and just chuck it because you think it's a dud, but it sprouts up all of a sudden. You're like, oh, where'd that come from? So
yeah, like I remember last spring I had these like bulbs that I thought were totally like dead, and it was just like, no, it was winter. And then in the spring they totally was like, oh no, we're here, don't worry about it.
I get excited.
And I love like,
don't you get excited when you see them sprout? That's like the crocuses and the irises and the daffodils in Maine when they start popping up. It's so pretty.
And I love working with kids in the garden too, because they just get like so excited by all of that. Like I teach at a community garden right now, and like the kids just get so excited about the planting, and also like they're so much more apt to eat vegetables. I mean, they just go around like tasting everything. Yeah. And their moms are like, they never did this before, and it's like, oh yeah.
It's because they didn't grow it. It's much different if you nurtured it and now it's producing vegetables, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, I have to eat this because I did it.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's a great way to get kids to eat things. We used to plant marigolds for Mother's Day in little Dixie cups in school. That was exciting too, though.
Yeah, and it's good to watch them kind of connect with the like, that whole cycle of growth. From like planting the seed to like, oh look, there's like little carrot tops showing up, and like, oh now we can actually pull the carrot. yeah, it's really beautiful.
It is. It's very cool. And you're the first person I've talked to that's got this sort of, or that I've really even heard of, I think, that integrates the seasons and foods and everything into your coaching. So if, I mean, we know your journey, obviously,
Yeah.
because you've traveled around as a farmer as well and worked on small farms and then traveled all over the place and ended up there in Scotland with very different growing conditions, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
than you would find probably in New England over here. So if you work with somebody that's from, another part of the world, how would you work with them on, do you know what I'm saying? Like foods and things when they're from somewhere else that isn't native to you or what you're really familiar with.
Yeah, I mean, and I have worked with clients in like Australia, which initially that was definitely like one of the, I was like, how is that going to work? Because like, they're in Australia and they're in a totally different season even. But I think it's there's similarities that overlap. Like, I remember I had one client and I think it was fall. Yes, because it was last spring. So it was fall there. And so fall is kind of that coming into, you're coming into winter. So you're kind of coming back into your body, and foods that kind of help you do that are the more rooted foods. So the foods that are in the ground. So it doesn't actually matter, what those foods are, even though like these days, most places you can get potatoes and, sweet potatoes and beets. I basically was like, you want to be eating foods that are roots. And so, I think it was during like kind of late summer, early fall for her, which is in Chinese medicine, the earth time of year. And so that's a sweet flavor, and that's that earthy energy. And so to be eating foods that are kind of from the earth and that have grown in the earth, it doesn't actually matter what they are. They can be some weird vegetable I've never heard of.
Right.
They're a root vegetable. There we go. So that's one example for sure. And like, yeah, there's definitely things that, people might not be able to find, but usually I can like adjust it, to fit whatever's around them. And I work with flower essences as well. And so it's just kind of like, okay, so what are the flower essences in their part of the world? And adjusting to that. Like Australia's got a whole line of great flower essences that you can use for down there. And like now that I'm in Scotland, I'm learning the Finhorn flower essences, which are Scottish ones. So yeah, it's all about adjusting to that place. And it's taking, the ideas are all the same. So it's just kind of modifying it to fit with whatever the environment is that people are in.
And so with herbs, and are herbs seasonal kind of a thing too, or does that go more with the Chinese medicine side?
So the herbs are like, yeah, I think I use them kind of like herbs can either be warming or cooling a lot is one way that I look at them. And so, which comes from the kind of Chinese medicine thinking. So like, and so some of that will depend on season and some of that will depend on like the actual person. So I'm matching on a couple different levels. But like there's certain warming herbs that like, just like warming foods that you would want to eat. Like if your body was cold or if it was winter, like for me, I tend to be a cold person. And so, and yet I actually really like wintry climates. So quite funny. Like I think I was telling you last time, like I actually really love snowy winters, but
yeah, no. My hands, my feet, and my nose are what get cold first.
Yep. Me too. And it's funny because I still love cold, snowy winters. And so like things like that warm you up, or that are things like ginger is an herb that's like very warming, or cinnamon is warming, cardamom to a certain extent. And then if you have someone who's very hot or who lives in a hot climate and needs cooling, then you would use herbs that are much cooler. So like in the summertime, like if you want to cool off, things like lemon balm or lemon verbena is like totally lovely. And foods like, that's why in the summer, things like watermelons and cucumbers and all of those kinds of foods are like abundant because those are actually cooling foods. So they're helping your body cool down. And it was really interesting.
Starting to get it now.
Yeah.
That makes total sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why that's why they're able to grow there. And it's really interesting because being in Scotland this year, like, we don't have hot summers, and it was really interesting to kind of check in with my body. And like, I was not craving, like, I think we got, because someone was growing cucumbers in there, like polytunnel, and like, I just was not craving them at all because it was like not hot out. And like, we can't really grow watermelons here. And like, it's because you don't really actually need them. Like, your body doesn't want watermelons. Like, it's like 50 degrees out.
Yeah.
And so it's, that kind of seasonal eating where it's like you're matching kind of what's going on temperature wise and season wise with what's actually coming out of the ground, and kind of trusting that like what's showing up at those different times or what your body needs to be eating to a certain degree. Obviously, like these days we can bring in other stuff as well, but kind of following that focus.
Isn't that interesting? Like, I hadn't really thought of that. And I think a lot of times I think of certain foods per season from having grown up north, but like my children are born and raised here in Florida. But I think because I'm a northerner, they probably, my things have rubbed off on them. But to live someplace where the climate doesn't change all that much, at least here in North Florida, it does, but it's more around December, January where it gets cold. And that's kind of when autumn is and leaves fall. Yeah. But then it's right back to like, the 70s and everything. So it's interesting to think that your body just probably, like if you take everything out of it, really, your body probably naturally craves whatever you're surrounded with, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, like for me, like in the winter, like I'm craving like warm foods, like cooked foods and soups and that sort of thing. And like when I lived in, New England in the summer, it's like, you wanted like something that did not need cooking, because like the last thing you wanted was something that warmed you up more. Whereas like this summer, I was like, oh, I don't really have to change my cooking style that much. Like, I actually still want cooked food. like
it stays chilly over there. I don't think I could do that all the time. It's a good thing you like the chilly weather.
Not quite in the summer, but summer's particularly chilly. I don't think it's always like this.
Yeah, I always still crave like Maine foods in the summer, because the lobsters and the Maine shrimp, I guess, is actually more of a winter thing, isn't it? I think is when you get those. Spring. But like all the restaurants that are only open in the summer months, so you'd like eat as much of it as you could before Labor Day when everything starts shutting down.
And like I remember when I was farming, it was like, you'd get, like at first I found it really kind of challenging, because it was like you would get your like crop of peas or whatever in June, and that's when you get peas, and like strawberries, and that's, then they're done for like a whole nother year. And it was like, and you just eat like tons of them during that month or those few weeks or whatever. And then it's like, move on to the next thing. And it's like, oh, in July you get, whatever the next crop is that, and then, that's gone. And, it's really, you kind of appreciate it more as well when you only have it for like a few weeks.
That's true.
A few months or whatever.
We're kind of spoiled with that now, since we get things from all over the world shipped in. But I remember that from growing up too. Strawberries were only during this, and my mom used to make strawberry jam and everything and freeze things. And the blueberries, we'd have to go.
Blueberry picking. Yeah, totally.
Somewhere out in the woods that somebody else had found a spot where there were blueberries, and they tell you where it is, by the bend with a big tree kind of thing, because they weren't cultivated. We picked wild blueberries.
Yeah, the little ones.
Yeah, I love those. But I think I ate more than I actually put in the coffee can. But she would go through that whole thing, and corn would come in the summer. But down here in Florida, we get strawberries in February, and corn soon after. So like corn is pretty much done, and we had that a couple months ago, when it was really the season for that. It ships. But it throws me off, because that's not my personal cycle.
Right.
So let me get back, let's bring this back around again. So I'm sure you've gone through this, because a lot of people do in doing what they're passionate about. And you've done so much traveling, and you're doing coaching around what you love to do. But has there ever been a time when you felt kind of doubtful about your career, or just like ditching that dream and going mainstream or something like that? And if so, how did you get past that and still maintain your passion for what you do?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about this a little bit when I spoke to you before, where like after university, I was kind of like doing geology and working at a lab and being like, this is not going to make me happy for the rest of my life. Like, I can totally see that, like, you know, staying inside doing lab work is, even though I love rocks, is not going to be me for the next 20 years or whatever. So I think taking that step away, and I started farming right after that. Yeah, I mean, it was definitely, I think at first it felt fine, because it was like, oh, this new adventure, and like people were kind of like, oh, that's kind of cool, and then eventually she'll settle down and whatever. Right. It was kind of like, yeah, she's not going to settle down. You know, I think it's, you know, for the most part, you know, people in my life have been really supportive, but definitely there's that kind of niggle in the back of your head that's like, am I totally crazy doing this? And like and like, especially, you know, now starting like coaching and running my own business, it's like, you know, there's always that little kind of feeling of doubt of like, can I really do this? Or, you know, or should I just like go get a real job? And then I'm like, no,
right.
Not even an option. And so I think, you know, one of the things I like about it is that it kind of pushes you outside of your comfort zone, which is something that like I think is really valuable, even though it can be really challenging for sure. But I like that, you know, I like that kind of constant like having to grow and change, and always having ways that I can be pushing myself to do that, even though sometimes I really don't want to. And let's see, what else was I going to say about that? Yeah, I think part of it is just like, I've always kind of had this like knowing, or like checking in with myself to kind of like feel into like whether it's what I'm doing is like the best decision for me. And like, so I think, you know, for people to have some sort of practice, whatever it is, to like kind of learn how to trust and like know your intuition, and kind of start to like focus on listening to that. Because I feel like the more I listen to it, the more it kind of pipes up and is like, you know, this is where you're supposed to be next, or this is, yep, this is what you're supposed to be doing, even if like it's really challenging right now and you totally feel like this is completely crazy. Like having that relationship with your intuition and your inner knowing, because I think, you know, we all know, our bodies know what we need to be doing, and it's that process of learning to listen to them that can be a bit challenging sometimes, and that people have to kind of, you know, you have to practice. It's a bit of work we all have to do.
Yeah, because that ego will jump in and keep you in your safe space.
Yeah, totally.
And that's when you're like, I think that's kind of a cyclical thing too, because we'll go through times where I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? You know, and then I'll have days where I'm like gung ho, super passionate about what I'm doing. I'm like spitting out all kinds of ideas and everything, and that's when I'm on a high, and I really am like, oh my God, I love this, right? And this is totally what I'm doing. And then like it comes back, are you sure this is what you want to be doing? And you're just like, shut up. Yes. Find yourself having an inner dialogue with that little gremlin in there. But really, you grow more when you stretch.
Yeah, totally. And it's interesting too, because like, even though there's that like bigger seasonal cycle, there's all these like smaller cycles that affect us as well. Like, you know, I work with the moon cycle a lot, and like, you know, yesterday was full moon, and so like full moon is like kind of that time of releasing, whereas like new moon is that time of kind of drawing in. And like, you can kind of watch your energy patterns like throughout these kind of smaller cycles as well. yeah, and it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I keep meaning to do that, to like really take kind of journal, and see if I see a pattern, because I'm sure there's a pattern in there.
Yeah.
I would just need to actually write it. And
Yeah, I know that's always the hard part.
Not a big fan of doing that. If I have to do something, it doesn't feel like I'm like, I don't want to do that. But I think it's important to have like maybe little strategies, little tricks that you can do to kind of bring yourself back to that when you're feeling uncertain. Do you have any of those types of things? I'll share what I do, but
you can tell me next. Yeah, I mean, for me, like going outside and going for a walk is like a really grounding exercise, like that's what kind of gets me back in touch with, like, if things are going crazy, I just need to like go outside and go for a walk. And for me, that's like more grounding than like, sitting and doing meditation or, anything else that people do. And then the other thing I do, which is just a really easy trick that doesn't even involve too much effort, is I use essential oils, and I'll just like, I actually did it before I got on the call because I use them for all sorts of things, but you just like take an essential oil, like this one's vetiver, which is very grounding, and you put a little drop on your hands, and then you just rub them together, and then you just breathe into your hands. And I find like that you can pick your essential oil depending on kind of what emotion you want to be working with, and that's a really grounding and
easy. That one's easy.
Like, yeah, like you don't have to leave your desk, like, and it just transports you into a whole different space. So that's one of my favorite ones. And I'll do that, like when I'm working or before I get on a call, or actually with my clients, I do it. I have them get an essential oil and we both do it together. And that's how we start the call, is we like do that, breathe kind of together for like a minute or two. And then we kind of start the call so that we're both kind of grounded and together, even though we might be on totally opposite sides of the world.
Yeah, that's awesome. I hadn't thought of that. That's a great tip.
Yeah.
What was the one you said you use?
The one it varies. Like today I use vetiver, which is a really nice kind of grounding oil. And with clients, I basically have like a basket of them, and I'll just draw them, and actually intuitively it matches the clients amazingly well. Like it's really fun to see which ones come up, and then we'll start, because we'll talk about the oils together, and they'll be like, oh, that totally resonates with what's going on in this bit. So
I love essential oils too. I have one that I run out of now, but I keep just the bottle of it on my desk at work, because I put it in one of those salt lamps that's got the little diffuser thing on the top. But I'll just smell the bottle. Sometimes it's a relax blend, and it just smells, well, I love it. It's a good one. Lavender is always good too. Yeah, a good go-to for everything.
Yeah,
I actually like rosemary. I have a huge like rosemary plant bush. What do you call it? I don't know. But anyway, it's right out here outside my window. And sometimes I'll just like rub my hands through it and smell that rosemary. Oh, it just smells so good. I'm walking around rubbing plants and sniffing them. That could be a problem. I don't know.
I don't think so.
Same with citronella. I do that too. I've got a plant out by my front door, and sometimes I'll do that. That smells nice. And I think it depends too, because sometimes I won't like the smell of something that I've liked previously. So I think it's good to kind of experiment and
and your body will tell you what it needs. Like I'll have essential oils that, like, sometimes I'll use it for like, it'll be like my go-to for weeks, and then all of a sudden my body, I'll be like, oh, I don't really like that one anymore.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
Yeah. And so it's like, it's learning to like listen to that and be like, okay, that means my body wants something else, and that doesn't need that one right now. Or yeah,
that's pretty cool. Yeah, I pretty much do the same thing outdoors. I love being outdoors anyway. I grew up outdoors, and I still do that, even if I just have to go sit on the ground barefoot and just breathe for a little while, or I put my hammock out and I'll just read
Nice.
books out there, and sometimes take a little nap, or we go hiking in the woods sometimes too, and that's just beautiful to breathe in. I think nature is a huge key to getting back to grounding yourself and clearing your mind and getting inspiration.
Definitely.
Yeah, I always tell people, do little grounding. Just go stand outside for like 5 minutes with bare feet, and just breathe. Breathe.
Yep. Yeah. Like this summer, it's been like, because it's been so rainy, it's been like, and we have this automatic like kind of thing that when it's raining, we stay inside. And so I've kind of had to like be like, nope, it's raining, I'm still going outside. And then your day totally shifts, it's like, you can have a good time outside in the rain. You just have to have good wellies,
I'm lucky where I live right now. We've got a screened patio. So I can sit out. I love it when the storms come in, usually in the afternoons, and it gets super windy, and there's a little lake right behind here. And I've always done that. Just sit out on a porch, even when I was little, and watch the storms come in. And I would do that with my daughter when she was younger, and we had a big second floor porch, and we'd go out there, and there's just that smell of the rain coming and everything. It's just one of my favorites. Favorite thing to do. And you don't have to get wet because you're still covered. Although when I was little, we used to just run out, put our bathing suits on and run out there.
In the summer.
So how would you say, it kind of sounds like for the most part, you've always done what you've been guided to do, except the geology part took a little turn, but still in the same realm recently, really, So, but how has living what you're passionate about affected you personally?
I think it's given me a life that's like much more, joyful and kind of filled with wonder. I mean, there's definitely been the challenges like we talked about before, for sure. And I think it's definitely like allowed me to learn to trust my intuition, because it's kind of those like serendipitous things that happen, you make a decision and you're like, think this is what's next, and then you like do it, and then there's all these little things that kind of fall into place, and it's like, oh, all right, that's and sometimes there's big challenges that come as well, but there's still always that kind of feeling that like, oh yeah, the next thing will appear, and it's totally okay if things are slightly chaotic and crazy right now or whatever. And I think it's it's given me a lot of chance to explore and chance for adventure. Like I definitely love to travel and explore, and it's open right now. I'm kind of becoming more, not like sedentary, but like staying in one place for a little bit longer. And so it's learning to kind of how to take those kind of more adventurous things I loved about traveling and how to like create them when I'm not traveling quite as much, which has been fun as well. So like, just learning how to explore in my own neighborhood, or, going out the back door and learning how to bring those senses of kind of exploration and adventure and wonder just into like, your daily life. And so, it's been really, really exciting.
Yeah, because you've had some changes over the past really year, right? Met your husband, well, obviously a little more than a year ago, but got married and moved to a whole different country. So it wasn't just like traveling, it was like moving there. That's a big change.
Yeah, that has been a big change. Yeah, so I mean, we met like 6 years ago or so, but I've been coming back and forth, so I was like familiar with the area at least. But yeah, we got married a year ago, so And then, immigration was one of those big challenges that comes into your life and makes you really have to decide that, nope, this is the right decision, even though this is no fun at all.
That's one of those check-ins. Do I really want to do this? Do I really want to do this?
Yeah, it was like, okay, this is stressful. It's going to be okay. And then, I moved over here at the end of last December. So it's totally been a shift, but it's been, it totally, again, it like feels like in my body, it feels like this is totally the next step, and I'm totally excited about it. And I totally think that this is where I need to be right now. Even though this summer was a little challenging, but we're going to autumn, which is my favorite season, so that's all right.
Yeah, I love that season too. It's my favorite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
definitely. The smell of the leaves. Like one of my favorite smells is when we used to burn leaves up north. Oh, gosh. That and the grass, mowing grass in the summer up there. That's a completely different smell than the grass down here. It's not the same grass.
Yeah, and the leaves, just that kind of like dried leaf, like, so good. And that like crisp air. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, right before that snow that most of us don't like, but you do.
I know, I love it.
So let's talk about your free gift a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
I know you'll be giving me the link to that, which will be on my website. I don't put the links on the YouTube channel because I just put that on there, but it's free. Everybody can just go to my website and get all this, your little bio, the MP3 version of the interview, the video version of the interview, and links to the gifts. So everything's all there, and you don't even have to sign up to get it. I'm just like giving it. I want everybody to do passionate shit and just watch these interviews and get inspired by them. I know that you're not alone because everybody has doubts. And I think that that's one of the key things that I really wanted to share with this series, was that every single person, no matter how successful they may be, go through the same things. Mm-hmm. So you just have to, like you said, tune in. It teaches you really to tune into your body more, and how you feel and the messages that your body gives you. I find a lot of people, when they're not doing what they're really passionate about, have all kinds of things blocking them, layoffs or, just stuff keeps popping up. And then they find they go and they do what they're passionate about. And it's like fairly,
right.
The stones are smaller. They're not boulders now. They're like pebbles, so it's a big difference. So go ahead. Anyway, I totally just kept chatting over there. Tell us about what you are offering for your free gift.
So I've got a little ebook, which is sensory. It's called Girasole Joy, and girasole is the Italian word for sunflower, which when I first started traveling, I went to Italy and totally fell in love with it. And they just have, sunflowers are this amazing flower because they move. If you watch them in a field, they'll move during the day so that they follow the sun. And so I love that imagery. And so this book is sensory explorations with the element of fire, which is that element of joy and of your heart and of kind of warmth and passion, which I thought fit really well with this interview series. So it's got, I think it's got 5 different days worth of activities, or not big activities, but just like little suggestions of how to connect with each of your 5 senses through fire. And so there's things with using different teas or different food, or just like different little exercises that you can do to connect with the fire element and maybe bring some more joy and passion into your life.
That's awesome. Should that be done during a certain season, or can that be totally independent?
I mean, summer is technically the fire season, but the like really great thing about, Chinese element theory is that like every season has all of the elements in it. And so like, and every person has all of the elements in them. So like, you know, it's relevant no matter when. So like, you know, you could be in any season and it's totally, it'll just get you connected to your fire element and yeah, hopefully bring some more joy into your life.
Awesome. I can't wait to check that out. That sounds
Yeah.
really cool. And I love like little daily
Yeah.
things
Really
because
simple.
it kind of keeps you connected for a moment, you know, and it's something to focus on every day. That's pretty neat. You offer on your website like the other elements in sort of the same
working on that.
thing.
Yeah, but I'm going to be offering all the different elements. So
oh, very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Something to look forward to. You'll have to let me know when you do that, so I'll share too.
Yeah,
that you've got them all up there.
Yes,
that's awesome.
To have them all, so you can be connecting with all your different elements, and just kind of, it's kind of feeling where they, you know, once you kind of learn to recognize them, you can learn to kind of work with them and learning where like one might be a little too much in your life or one might need a little bit more, and you can kind of feel how to bring or lessen them into your life, which is pretty useful.
That's awesome. I love this whole different, that's a whole different thing for me. So that's very cool. I'm definitely going to have to explore that more. It's like, it's kind of like the chakra thing, you know, if one's kind of out of balance, you have certain things. So that's what this sounds like too. You kind of have something out of one of your elements out of balance, and you'll learn to recognize it and work with that to
and they all kind of and they all balance each other. So, you know, like if one's out of like too much, then another one's going to be too little. And, you know, they all have like, they have all sorts of little cycles within the whole thing. So yeah, it's another whole way of thinking about how your body is and how you're living.
Very cool. And I gave me something else I'm going to have to learn about. Like I don't have enough books on just about everything anyway. But
pretty true.
Very cool. Okay, so just a reminder, we'll wrap this up, but everybody can get everything I talked about at CherriseBoucher.com. And I encourage you to sign up for my newsletter so that I can share the next interviews and past interviews and highlight things with you. And I also share other little tidbits and such. And I guess that's it. And I already talked about the link to all this will be up there. And anything else you'd like to share before we sign out?
Yeah, I don't think so. Just get out there and get exploring.
Yes, even in your backyard.
That's
for those of us who don't travel a whole bunch. There are really things that you'll discover a lot closer than you think. I know I've found that to be true here in Florida. There's so much to explore, and it's really very close, you know, within a couple hours even. So
yeah, and it can be simple. It's, you know, as simple as like, you know, driving a different way home from work, or like, you know, going to a different coffee shop. Like, you know, it doesn't have to be like this big, huge adventure. It can like be really simple, not too out of the way, and, you know, totally shift your kind of stuck energy. So
yeah, try a different ethnic food. I don't think I'm saying that right, but whatever, you know. Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much, Heather, for sharing with us today, and I hope we can connect again very soon. Something new pops up, we could do this all over.
Excellent. Yeah, it's been super fun. Thank you.